Welcome to our Extra Special. Now, for today, we will delve into a critical topic that has been on the front or forefront of national discourse. That's the constitutional review. As Nigeria continues to evolve, the need to amend and update the constitution to reflect the aspirations and needs of its people has become increasingly apparent.
Now, the constitutional review process is a significant undertaking that has the potential to reshape Nigeria's future. And so to that, we are honored to have the spokesperson of Nigeria's House of Representatives, and that's Akin Rotimi Jnr., who's with us in the studio to discuss the progress, challenges, and the way forward for Nigeria. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning. Could you start by giving us an overview of the current constitutional review so far? What's the update and what's the latest?
So this is the 6th round of amendments. Of course, we know that the 1999 Constitution, as amended, came into force in 1999. So with the 4th Assembly, the dawn of the 4th Republic. So the 5th Assembly, there was a constitutional review round. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and then this is the 10th Assembly. So this is the 6th round of alterations or constitution review process. And I think it's very important that Nigerians understand. I mean, you hear a lot of lamentations about how bad things are with Nigeria and how faulty the 1999 Constitution was, and how that it wasn't a reflection of, a lot of Nigerians' expectations. But the point about it is that we need to understand that the Constitution would never, there will never be a time that the Constitution will be discarded. It would always be as amended. Since the 4th Republic came live, it's 25 years since democracy. We will keep on, Nigeria will keep on being a work in progress. We will keep on trying to amend the Constitution so it's more fitting to, the aspirations of Nigerians. So this is the 6th alteration. For the House of Representatives, we have the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker, Benjamin Okeze-Kalu, who is chairing the House Committee on Constitution Review. You have membership from every state in Nigeria. You have all the women in Parliament, all the women in the House of Representatives also represented in that committee as well. For us so far, we've set a target of December 2025 to be able to arrive at key constitutional reforms. Because we realize that when you leave things too late, close to elections and politics and campaigns, it gets a little difficult following through. So we have a timeline to ensure that by December 2025, we achieve those key constitutional reforms. And our timeline involves extensive engagements with people, with various stakeholders. In fact, starting out, we made sure that we engage different stakeholders, but this is one of the stakeholder groups who are engaged in now, the Judiciary, to make sure that we carry them along. One of the problems of the constitutional review process has been that you go so far in a direction and then people say, oh no, I mean, we weren't carried along. And then it's now a problem getting their concurrence on key issues. We think that the Judiciary are a key stakeholder group, and that's why we engage with, justices, judges. We had the Attorney General and Minister of Justice in attendance. We had, members of, speakers of the State Houses of Assembly, very well represented. We also had, the representative of the Chief Justice, so it was represented by Justice Emmanuel Agim, who incidentally delivered the lead judgment in the issue of local government autonomy. So I think we're well on course to deliver a constitutional review process that reflects the yearnings of Nigerians.
Okay. Yeah. Now, aside the judiciary, what other aspects of society is also involved in this inclusivity? I mean, because one of the main criticisms with previous constitutional amendments have been, inclusivity and public participation.
Right. So, well, for us again, we represent our members across the 360 constituencies in the country. So it's also key that everyone, on that committee, keeps our doors open to Nigerians generally. But aside of that, aside of judiciary now, we have engagements with civil society, we have engagements with women, we have engagements with young people. So there are different stages to make sure that we're carrying everyone along. Even the governors as well, we're carrying them along. The traditional institution, we're carrying them along so that at the end of the day, it's a review process that's truly reflective and of the diversity of opinions, because many people have different shades of opinions. I mean, so far we had a memoranda submission process where we had about 305 different proposals, memoranda for members of the public, individuals and groups, saying these are aspects of the Constitution that they want amended. So it's a very inclusive process. And that's why we're optimistic that it will be well received. Like I said, there are different shades of opinions of things to be amended, but the collective wisdom is what, produces, the outcomes at the end of the day.
Okay, I mean, just, what key areas are, being considered for review?
Well, so I have a number of clusters, and I'll just share. First of all, there's the federal structure and devolution of powers generally. And along those lines, you have things like local government autonomy, decongesting the exclusive list to allow for greater participation of the subnationals, the states, and the local governments. You have issues around independent candidacy. You have issues around, fiscal federalism. Even the legislature, electoral reforms, human rights. Again, the hot topic of decentralizing our security system, or what some call state policing, judicial reforms, the issue of inclusion of underserved, underrepresented groups, like especially women in politics, both appointed and elective positions, people with disabilities as well, the issue of state creation, the issue of traditional institutions, and generally the structure of governance in Nigeria. As you know, the Constitution is not something that should be too unwieldy. You know what I mean? It's just supposed to, the spirit and content of it is supposed to give us the ground norm from which all other laws, derived. Right. So we have a legislative agenda for the 10th Assembly where a lot of issues around legislation is resolved, but issues around constitutional review, those are the basic clusters. And I think that, again, it might seem like we're speaking so much English and Nigerians are like, how does this affect my life at the end of the day? But issues of insecurity, those are issues that every Nigerian, faces. So people want to be able to know this current structure is not working. This current policing system, over-centralized, not very effective and efficient. So there's a consensus across many stakeholder groups that we need to fix that. But the question is, what do we fix it into? There are concerns that we don't lead to unintended outcomes by trying to fix a problem. There are issues around the economy, everybody knows. Issues around health, education. That's what Nigerians want, right? So it's to look at the Constitution critically and see what areas we need to fix to be a lot more efficient in delivering the goods to people.
We understand that the House Committee on Constitutional Review are engaging with key personalities in the judiciary for a retreat here in Lagos. Can you share some insights on the nature of these engagements and their importance, to this review process? Well,
so for us, part of the objectives that we have is to strengthen the judiciary, right, with this constitutional review process that we're currently having. The independence of the judiciary is very important. The issues around, how to make, the judges a lot more, their welfare, to make them a lot more efficient, issues of administration of justice, those are issues that, are very, very crucial and very central. And besides that, they are the ones that interpret the Constitution. The lead judgment in the local government autonomy case, said, it's unconstitutional, right, for, states to receive revenue accruing to local governments. And so it's to ensure that if they are going to be the ones interpreting, the Constitution and and all of that, that it's important that they are part of the process, so that they let us know what the challenges are, what they see as their own issues. You know, we have a legislative agenda and a direction in which we're going to make sure that it's aligned with what it is that they also have in mind. Again, and I think that this is to the credit of Right Honorable Abbas Tajuddin, Mr. Speaker, that he has brought to bear a very inclusive you know, way of handling things. Together with Right Honorable Benjamin Kalu, it's, you know, the 10th Assembly has been very engaging, and we've gotten very positive feedback about that.
And what are these feedback and from the judiciary as well? Oh
yes, from the judiciary as well. I mean, it was very well attended. Like I said, you had the Attorney General, and you also had, you know, a lot of Lord Chief Justices. You also had a representative of the Chief Justice of the Federation. The feedback has been that this is different. It looks like you guys are onto something here, you know, to be able to ensure that we're as productive as possible with this constitution review process. But, you know, I was saying that this is a reflection of the general way that the 10th Assembly is doing things really different, you know, to ensure that, look, we understand what representation means. We understand what it means to carry everyone along. And that's what is being reflected in these rounds of constitution review.
All right. There's also talks around Nigeria reverting back to a parliamentary system of government and resource control, particularly by states. I would just like you to speak on that.
Well, of course, so for us, part of the objectives of, you know, the 10th Assembly legislative agenda, right, is to ensure to a very large extent that we devolve more power to the states. And when you talk of devolution of power, you also have to talk about fiscal federalism to make sure that they have more resources, because they are closer to the people, and they should be the ones that should be able to have the resources to be able to address those issues. And if you look at the Constitution currently, key issues around primary health, environment, primary universal basic education, all those issues already fall, you know, under the ambit of, you know, the subnationals. So it's part of our objective that, you know, the structure of Nigeria needs to be looked at in such a way that they have more resources. Let us make the center to be a lot less, you know, the structure to be a lot less centralized, to allow very healthy competition amongst the states, among the local governments, to be able to, you know, take the lead in actively addressing, you know, issues that affect Nigerians. So for us, it's definitely part of what it is that we want to do.
Of course, one of the things that's very important when it comes to issues, and as important as constitutional review, is transparency and accountability. With your talks during this retreat, what are some measures that you were taking as a committee to make sure that this process is as transparent as possible?
Well, so to start with, what you're having now is a key sectoral engagement. Like I said, we're going to have engagements with civil society, more engagements because we had several in the past. We're going to have with young people. And aside of that, we're going to go on the road as well. Every state of the Federation, we're going to have engagements, you know, with Nigerians, so that, you know, their voices can be included in the entire process, because that is what legitimizes the process. But, you know, from what you see, you know, going on right now in the country, you'll see that we're generally moving in the direction of fixing this, you know, imbalances. I think I must give credit to Mr. President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that even within the current, you know, structure, the current constitution, he has still found ways around addressing those, you know, imbalances. So, for example, accruals from fuel subsidy, you know, the removal of the fuel subsidy regime, he has concentrated more on the states to allow the states to have more resources. And that's why he is very, very frantically saying, you know, Nigerians, okay, yes, I know you're holding us accountable and demanding a lot for us, but look in the direction of the states, because the states have gotten a lot more than they've gotten in, you know, recent years, you know, to be able to advance, you know, key issues. So for us, there's a lot going on at this point in time. You can see with the local government autonomy, you didn't even need to wait for the constitutional review process to be concluded before being able to take that key decision. And in the next weeks or months, basically, you're going to have a situation where local governments are going to get funds directly where it is now stated that it's unconstitutional for caretaker committees and for resources to be, given to, any local government that does not have a democratically elected representative, local council. So, of course, that is going to put pressure, on, the necessary stakeholders to ensure that those elections take place. And, but, again, Nigeria is going through that phase of a lot of, and I'm sure that everyone that's perceptive is seeing that a lot is going on at the same time. There are concerns about what, these things would lead to. There are concerns around over-centralizing as well, because we're trying to say we're devolving, and at the same time, we're now saying that maybe elections for local council should be conducted by INEC. And so there are a lot of issues, and I think that we have that challenge, right, of making sure that the constitutional review process leads to outcomes that, reflect, the yearnings of Nigerians. Of
the people. I mean, just also
hang on a second before you go.
Ladies first.
Good, ladies first, always. I'm glad you're talking about these issues, because it takes me to this question, right? And the critical issues that Nigerians are facing, socioeconomic, the zones as well, the issues that they're facing zonally when it comes to the 36 states and all the zones in Nigeria, it begs to ask the question on the constitutional review and how it seeks to address the socio-political critical issues that the everyday Nigerian is facing. Yeah. What are some of those issues? Are they being looked at, and how is it going to be addressed?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, you see, when you talk to the average man on the street, constitutional, what are you talking about? I'm hungry. I can't, work late in the night. I can't freely move around without being concerned about my security. So Nigerians just want to be able to live better lives. Nigerians want to be able to optimally, right, benefit from our commonwealth. And, you have that nexus between the laws and the kind of constitution we run and our ability as political elite to be able to deliver, on these outcomes. Like I said, fixing insecurity, right, it's obviously not working. The over-centralized policing system. And those have outcomes on the lives of Nigerians. The economy, definitely outcomes on the lives of Nigerians. Healthcare, primary healthcare, right, is a crucial factor. And all of these issues have to do with the way the Constitution is structured, the way our laws are structured, that should be looked at to ensure that those that are closest to the people and those that have the greater capacity, right, to be able to deliver, right, on the yearnings of the people are properly empowered and resourced to be able to take that lead.
All right. I mean, I'm going to stay on the economic aspect, which, of course, is, well, I call it the bane of quite a number of Nigerians on a regular. Yeah. What is being done to address the economic challenges, of Nigerians? I mean, things as basic as feeding is almost becoming a luxury. From people having it at 3 square meals, it's now 2 for some, 1, some half. So what is being done to, address these issues?
Well, so as you know, the executive arm of government are the ones that, essentially implement, policies, that directly affect the lives of Nigerians. For us in the legislature is holding the executive to account, starting with the process of, the budgeting process, to ensure that, the appropriations for critical sectors reflects, the current situation of things, which has essentially been done. And for us, it's to ensure that we follow through with effective implementation of the budget, and critical arms of government that are meant to implement these issues, we oversight them properly to be able to, and for us, that's why you see various House committees have always been very critical about holding the executive to account. And one thing that we don't see very much, which I think we need to see more, is the sense of urgency from the executive. And we urge His Excellency, Mr. President, that in implementing this project, because we appropriated, the funds, we were the ones that passed the appropriation budget. So we have full confidence, right, in, that, the full implementation of the budget will be able to address, these critical issues. Not just issues around handouts and palliatives like you find, but key issues are done so that Nigerians can take the lead in being able to fend for themselves. Nigerians are honorable people. They want to work. They need power. So, I mean, funds have been appropriated in those areas. Critical policies are being done in those areas to ensure that we have power for Nigerians to be able to drive small businesses. There are things being done about access to credit for small businesses. There are issues around economic infrastructure, key roads, connecting farms to, market and all of that. These are key issues that would result in outcomes in the lives of Nigerians. But like I said earlier, there needs to be that sense of urgency, and I think that, and this is speaking personally, I don't get that sense a lot, from, a lot of things that are currently going on. I think Mr. President needs to get his cabinet and his people to sit up because, like you said, Nigerians really are feeling the brunt of it. We as representatives, we are the ones close to the grassroots. We get the feedback from the grassroots as to how all this, I mean, many of us have to take up welfare, issues and, sometimes even some things that executives, should otherwise be doing, which is not really the, the issue. So the point that I'm making is that the executive arm of government needs to do more, right, to implement these very good plans to be able to, fix the economy and make Nigerians a lot more, secure at this point in time.
There's a newly released report by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, NBS, in collaboration with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, that has revealed that Nigerian public officials received bribes amounting to 721 billion naira in 2023 alone. And those are alarming figures if you equate that to Nigeria's gross domestic product, which is the GDP. And so it begs to ask a question about, holding power accountable.
Right.
And so with your constitutional review ongoing, are there steps to create laws that will be able to hold public officials accountable, not only for whistleblowers who are able to whistleblow them, but also hold them accountable to power, whether they're elected or appointed?
So you see, the constitutional review process, is essentially looks at critical sectors like the justice sector, the judiciary, to ensure they're able to properly function. You don't find a lot of laws, like what you're talking about, anti-graft and all of that, being addressed quite in the Constitution. There are laws that address all of these issues. And for us in the 10th Assembly, House of Representatives, anti-corruption is a key aspect of our agenda, and it is to look at extant laws, laws setting up the EFCC, the ICPC, and all of that so that they can, better function in their role, in reducing corruption to the barest minimum. However, again, I don't think that in that area, it's really a matter of new laws or constitution. It's really about the existing laws, right, are enough, to be able to ensure that if really we follow through with these issues, dispensation of justice on these issues, things can move on, really faster. So it's not really about creating new laws all the time. There is a whistleblowers law that bill that I have, for example, being, that's in the process in the House, for you to be able to follow through. But the key issue is that even the existing laws that we have, key stakeholders, being able to follow through to actually holding, the entire process, to work, very well.
All right. Now, I mean, the existing laws, that you talked about has some flaws too. I mean, part of which is the immunity clause for governors and, particularly elected office holders. Right. Is there anything being done to address this?
So it's one of the things that we have and you see that previous cycles of constitutional review had actually tried to, take out those clauses. I'm not going to speak personally, but I'll tell you that it's one of the things in the legislative agenda that we have and the focus of the Constitutional Review Committee to be able to look at some of these issues. Of course, the intendment of that provision had been that people in key executive positions are not distracted by needless laws, cases and all of that. But again, the jury is out on whether that has really been the case or whether it needs to be looked at to be able to take out those immunity clauses. But it's definitely something that we're also looking at as well.
How about remuneration for public office holders?
Well, there's that. People are taking, what, 40% cuts?
Right. So, well, remuneration of the Constitution expresses very clearly, in every provision that talks about the president, the National Assembly members, and all of that, that the wages would be as determined by the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Committee. So there's a law establishing RAMFAC, and that needs, probably needs to be looked at, to, reflect current dynamics in that space. However, it's good to also look at the issue of a lot of misinformation around the actual, earnings of, public sector workers.
Would you like to clear some of them?
So what would you want to ask? How much?
Maybe how much they pay?
I've said it times without number that following that campaign of disinformation that we had, I made it very clear then that the wages of a lawmaker is not more than 600,000, even less than that. I'm just approximating it to 600,000 a month. And this is something
Does that cover allowances or just salary?
So what do you mean by allowances?
I mean...
And daily allowances, sitting allowances.
Sitting allowance.
What sitting allowances?
Bills.
Nobody has. No, nobody has. You don't have what sitting allowances.
So there are no allowances attached?
There's nothing like allowances. If you have a function to carry out, you can be able to get, the resources to be able to address those issues. So, for example, you have to run your office. You have to run your constituency office. So all those things are things that...
They are for administrative purposes.
Yes, and if your organization is going to send you on a task, are they not going to give you the resources to be able to get there, to be able to get things done? So don't let us conflate issues. It's very clear. On the RAMFAC website, it's very clear about what, every single, category, from the president, the vice president, the Senate president, the, senators, the House of Rep speaker, down to every member. What everybody earns is very clear. It's very clear. So if you have a different, like in the running of your office, where you have to retire certain amounts, that look, you're able to prove that I incurred this expense and you get refunded for that. How do you call that allowances? It's something that everybody, every single person working for any organization, definitely, you don't expect people to run simply because you're holding public office to run that office with your own expenses. And again, all the provisions of the earnings of lawmakers, for example, that has been a hot topic around is clearly stated, the different cycles. And what the disinformation campaign has always targeted is perhaps something that is done in 4 years. People say, oh, this is monthly. And you saw what the lady that was reeling it out that, oh, so amount monthly, so amount. And I gave the example that the housing allowance, for example, is 4.9 million. These are things, and I think that for us in the 10th Assembly, we are willing to be a lot more open and to have these conversations a lot more and to disclose a lot more, because where there is opacity and where people think that, oh, you're trying to hide something, that is what breeds the impression that you have something to hide. It's very clear. That is something that is given to you once in 4 years. So you can imagine, I know, some of my staff that had to relocate from Ekiti, do you understand? And from other places to be able to, I know how much even they themselves had to get accommodation for 1 year. So you know how things are in Abuja. So when you say that you give a lawmaker 4.9 million once in 4 years to be able to get accommodation, and then someone misinterprets that to mean that it is given every month, it's disingenuous, it's unfair. Lawmakers take on a huge amount of pressure. You can't even just imagine. When you talk about difficulties with Nigerians at this point in time, who do you think they turn to? I mean,
one issue that, Nigerians have also raised is the fact that, once there's a new election, there's a new person in office, it's like everything is new. There's
no continuum.
No, thank you. No continuum in not just governance.
I think I know what he's talking about.
But in terms
so for
of
example,
your car, for instance, your vehicle, for instance, it's changed. And then the question of, oh, what happened to the previous one? Some would even want to say, your housing itinerary and all of that. So I would just like you to maybe clarify that.
Well, we veered off from constitution to, but I'm happy to engage on it. I mean, it's something that Nigerians deserve to know. I was very, very clear, you know, when that issue of, you know, vehicles came up several months ago. One of the things that you found is that instead of ignoring the issue, we came out to frontally engage the issue. And I encourage Nigerians to go and look at my statement on that. It was very clear and explicit. Part of what we said, right, is that there is a deboarding policy, right, where at the end of a tenure, right, the office holder that's been allocated a vehicle is given the opportunity to buy that vehicle. And I pointed out that a lot of the agitations that we're talking about, because you are talking now about what happens to the old vehicles and all of that. This is the time for you to agitate. If you feel that deboarding policy is wrong, you don't wait until it has been done. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. The preceding year before the resumption of a new assembly, these arrangements are made. So after people have taken vehicles away, right, in you know, the former assembly, and then that is when we just, if you know, vehicles are allocated, and then everyone, you know, gets up to say, oh, what when? I said, look, the price for freedom is eternal vigilance. We have to, you know, if it's important to us, let us talk about it. Let's have those conversations now. Engage and say that deboarding policy, we don't want it. We want everybody serving out to leave those vehicles behind. So it's really, but I need, my own duty, especially as spokesperson, is to be upfront with you about what actually happens. So at the end of a tenure, you know, the current of, and this is not something that's exclusive to the legislature. It's something that is an extant policy that applies to judicial workers, it applies to the executive, it applies to everyone. So I understand that Nigerians want a greater degree of accountability, and that's what we're doing by, number one, being transparent about the process, to say, look, this is what is happening. You know, these are not, you know, status symbols like some people have crafted it. These are not, what's it called, you know, entitlements. They are work tools for you to be able to function. You have extensive oversight, you know, functions across different states, right? You have extensive engagements in the constituency. There's a whole lot. So providing a work tool for a lawmaker to be able to function is not a right or something that you're given because of a status symbol, like, and they tag it as luxury, and then they have exaggerated amounts about how much those things are bought. Those are not, you know, very helpful conversations to be able to take things forward. It's for us to be able to explain fully that this is the current policy, this is the situation, being upfront about it, upfront about the earnings of lawmakers. There is nothing to hide. Go to Ramfac's website, you can download it. On the issue of vehicles, we'll have conversations. The vehicles that are allocated are not our personal property. They're not. They are the property of the National Assembly till the last day. So if you feel that as a Nigerian, and if Nigerians feel that this should be, then, you know, agitate for
they address
a review.
The deboarding policy.
Yes, address the deboarding policy, that if you feel that lawmakers shouldn't go away with the vehicles, but it's not just lawmakers. This is a policy that is service-wide. This is a policy that affects every single public official that's in that position to, you know, yeah.
Final, because we're out of time and we just have about a minute. So I have a threefold question. So hopefully can we treat them in 20 seconds each. The very first one is about you said that for inclusivity, you know, you are looking to include more women in politics and also people with disability in politics as well. With the 72 seats that is now being, the bill that's now being passed for a second reading, is that 74, I beg your pardon, is that also part of the plans for the constitutional review? And also, what would you say to Nigerians who are concerned about 74 more seats, meaning more expenses, more salaries, more allowances? What would you say to that? And finally, what will your final messages, your message be to Nigerians who are watching and are concerned about the review?
Okay, so the first question is on
74 additional seats.
Additional seats, and then the other one. So
the expenses of it, the expenses incur.
So for us, like you rightly mentioned, inclusion. Currently, you have 14 women in the House of Representatives out of 360. I think it's clear that that's an imbalance. In the Senate, you have 4 out of 109. It's clear that there's an imbalance. The question is, how do we go about it? And yes, you're correct that that bill, Constitutional Review Bill, has passed second reading. At the public hearing stage, there'll be a lot of engagement about the how. One of the proposals has been additional seats, right? And, you know, one of the proposals has been that this should be a transitionary period, right? Maybe 2 or 3 electoral cycles. So it's not something permanent. At least to try to address that imbalance over the short to medium term, while we fix other issues about women's access to resources, women's inclusion in the political process. Because remember, you can't stop me from contesting for an election because you want to have a woman. Everybody, every Nigerian has the constitutional right to stand for election. So it's hard for you to say that you're reserving seats out of the 360, because in that you would also be leading to an unintended outcome of disenfranchising certain people. So it's a balance. It's a conversation that we're having. Like you said, it's past second reading. At the stage of public hearing, it will be debated. The constitutional review process, it will be debated. The con, to read, the major con is always the issue of increase in cost of governance, which is a concern, of course, for Nigeria. My final word would certainly be that I think Nigerians should keep faith, right? The 10th Assembly House of Representatives is very different. We're very interested in engaging. We prioritize engaging and inclusion, enriching everything that we're doing. And we're sure that the constitutional review process will lead to outcomes that Nigerians will be very happy about.
Well, I want to say a very big thank you to you for taking out the time and joining us this morning. And we're so honored to have this conversation with you.